We'd like to resume our program, and we are very fortunate. This next part of the program we're calling an industry perspective on business analytics, and we are very fortunate to have 4 different industries and 4 different perspectives of some very knowledgeable people about analytics to talk about the application of analytics in their organization, the challenges, the perspectives that they have. So I would like to introduce the members of our panel. We have Nancy Tinsley. She's the president of University Hospital Parma Medical Center. Nancy her work focuses on clinical systems integration, physician alignment, and advancing healthcare services across the continuum throughout the healthcare system and community. She has advanced experience in performance improvement, business analytics, system thinking, and leadership development. Please help me, join me in welcoming Nancy Tinsley. Also on our panel, we have Pavan Divakarla. He is the business leader for data and analytics at Progressive Insurance. He is currently working on mobile direct-to-consumer acquisition systems. He is also the leader for the big data efforts at Progressive, which includes infrastructure build and execution of business applications. His passion and expertise lies in high-end analytics and how it can be used in both strategic and tactical planning and in decision-making. Please join me in welcoming Pavan Divakarla. Next on the panel, we have Kim Dippold. She's Vice President and Senior Audit Strategist at Key Corporation. She's responsible for developing automated solutions using SAS Enterprise Guide and Cognos reporting tools for ad hoc reporting, standalone audits, and continuous analytics. She is responsible for developing and implementing risk intelligence initiatives to support Key's third line of defense. She is a certified systems auditor and holds a bachelor's degree in business administration from Miami University of Ohio. Please join me in welcoming Kim Dippold. And finally, we have Tarek Soukier. He is a analytics lead consultant at PricewaterhouseCoopers. He has more than 17 years of professional experience in startups, Fortune 500s, and international firms. He has extensive experience in the areas of technology strategy planning, predictive analytics, forecasting, business intelligence, data warehouse, and ERP systems. He is also in the final stages of earning a doctorate degree in information systems, focusing on business analytics. His dissertation research investigates user interaction with advanced analytics to find ways to enhance insight generation through innovative thinking and creative decision-making. Please join me in welcoming Tarek Soukier. I'd like to open our panel by inviting each of the panelists to talk for a few minutes about analytics in their organization and the perspective that their organizations take towards analytics. So, also, after some initial introductions, some initial questions, we want to make this as interactive as possible. So if you have questions, this is a great opportunity to get different perspectives in a number of different industries. I know we've heard a lot about healthcare, but analytics applies to a number of different industries, and this is a great opportunity to discuss those issues and to get some insights from some very knowledgeable people. So please don't hold back with questions. We hope that that's part of this part of the program. Whoever wants to go first, please jump right in.
One of the things I want to talk about is we call it enterprise analytics. One of the things that we're developing at PricewaterhouseCoopers in the analytics consulting practice is automating the analytics process so that collecting the data, transforming the data, developing the model, and deploying the analysis is automated into an application, standardizing the process. So for example, a client comes to us and says they want to understand more about customer satisfaction, then we give them this application where they have a survey, they start pushing it to their customers, customers fill in the data, The data goes automatically into the application. The application automates the process of producing analysis, developing the model, and then 70 or 80% of the process is standardized. Then we come in as consultants and we do further analysis and we continue the process of the analytics. But that helps the client a lot because it saves cost. Now the process, instead of taking a long implementation time, it takes like a shorter time, and the cost is more manageable. So that helps them a lot. Plus it helps us, instead of rewriting the code every time you're doing the same analysis and redoing the same steps, that's automated into this process. So enterprise analytics is something that we're focusing on. Plus in the enterprise analytics, something else that we're working on is disseminating analytics across the organization. So usually CEOs rely on developers and power users to develop the analysis, generate the insights, and give them the decision-making process output from the analytics. Now they have it on their iPads, they have it on their iPhones, so it's very easy for them to open up an analysis, look at the numbers, do some quick analysis themselves, understand the business in like a few minutes, understand the performance of their organization. And that's, I think, one of the things that everybody's pushing for. Even other consulting firms, McKinsey, and Chris was talking also about how SAS is helping automate the process and providing analytics as a commodity. Instead of selling services, we want to sell it as a commodity, especially for things that are like repeatable processes, things like customer satisfaction, of that nature. So that's.
Thank you. First of all, I want to start by thanking Christian for just a very comprehensive, exciting summary of what I felt was my world every day. And I know it's everybody's world out there every day, and it's a huge challenge. And from that, I took a few points. So 0.5%. Wow. Now, we're told we use 10% of our cognitive ability, and we use 0.5% of our analytical ability. So I think we have a lot of opportunity. And it is overwhelming when you look at everything that was presented, and everybody in this room, I'm sure, is a very innovative, curious, future thinker, and was the whole time going through fabulous ideas of how to make this work. One thing we have to remember as patient leaders is it's a journey. Using this data the right way, the right time is really a journey. When you look 30 years back, we weren't doing organ transplants in healthcare. We weren't doing statistical analysis on populations to put together clinical protocols to keep people healthy and identify their risk before they know they even have it. So you can say we've come a long way, and I try to look at this as a journey. I'm fortunate, like all of you, to be in a learning industry. So as long as we keep learning and stay curious and innovative and don't let this overwhelm us, we'll make great strides every day in business analytics. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how business analytics applies to quality. And I tell people in my world when they're sharing their stories with us, you know, and we want evidence of how well we're doing, and they have senses of how well we're doing. You know, there's that old-fashioned statement, in God we trust, everyone else must have data. And it's really, they need to have knowledge and wisdom about what they're doing so that they can act on it. So in healthcare, we use data and business analytics every single day to save lives. Quality is our priority number one. And how do we as analytics and business leaders partner together to know what we need to be using in what point of care every single day? So when you look at it, whether we're using it for genomics, I see the continuum of business analytics from genomics all the way to population health, if we were to have such a continuum. And so when I saw the photo of the OR that Christian showed, did that scare you? Was there not a lot of risk in that photo? How do we know what we're doing when we have 8 or 10 people in an OR managing all of that equipment and all of that data? How do we get to the point where all of that data is funneling into a specific system, and we have predictive analytics to say, if these trends continue, your patient's going to be at risk because here's where we're headed. Whether it's changes in vital signs, changes in oxygenation, how do we know that? We actually have a project that we're doing in our neuro ICU that's very much like that, is when we take care of very neurocomplex patients every day, how does all this data funnel in so we can say now that if these trends continue in 18 hours, these are the clinical risks we're going to start seeing. But I also want to share with you that data and business analytics isn't going to tell us everything that's going on in our organization. So I started in a new role at University Hospitals last year as the president of Parma Medical Center. Being the data geek that I am, I spent the first weekend before I even started going through every single report and data anybody was willing to give me. And then in that first week of rounding on the unit and seeing patients, there was a patient population that was very evident to me that we have a high risk of vascular disease and wounds in our organization. And how is the inpatient and the outpatient world working across information to take care of these patients? How are the nurses and the physicians and the vascular docs and the endocrinologists working with the diabetes side of this? It wasn't even a priority because it didn't come out in any information that said this is high risk. So those are the kind of things when you're out there as a leader running your business that you really have to look at. Does your business analytics data match what you're seeing in your organization? The other point I want to make is our consumers. Our consumers use the data we give them to make decisions about healthcare. One of our challenges in healthcare is we use the data we have. It's not always the data we want. So think of this example is if you're trying to pick a system and a surgeon to do your total knee replacement, what information are you going to use to evaluate where and where you should get it done? So right now what we give you is mortality and complications. So let's just say we all know from an outcomes perspective, we want to get out of the hospital without any mortality and without complications. But when you ask our consumers what they really want to know, it's very different than the analytical information we have. They want to know, how well will you manage my pain? How quickly will I be functional again? How quick can I get back to the golf course, take care of my family? Or how much care will I need? And which clinical program will meet those needs based on their outcomes? So those are really the goals ahead of us when it comes to consumers' need for business analytics. And the last point I want to make to close on is how do we lead using business analytics? How do we integrate with our teams using this? So how many of us have our analysts on our teams so that they know what our business is like? So there's no doubt that an insurance company runs their data in their business very different than a healthcare company to some degree. But do our business analytics understand the needs of our patients, the clinical issues we're dealing with, how we're managing clinical protocols? So I really just want to close by saying, how do we use that wisdom built off of business analytics and lead with integrated teams and really focus on that abundant mindset that Christian spoke about? Thank you.
All right, hi, I'm Kim with KeyCorp, and I am part of our audit group, so the third line of defense. So I can speak specifically to what we do from the third line of defense perspective. There are definitely many other groups in Key that use SAS Enterprise Guide, but our group was actually started as a part of audit in 2012. We have our core analytics team with 1 manager and 3 staff, and then we have what we call an extended team. So we trained other auditors throughout our group so that they know how to use SAS Enterprise Guide. So if they're doing an audit, they can do some simple analytics, pull a population, maybe do a few simple queries, but that way it's spreading it out amongst audit and getting more people exposure to using SAS. Our core team, we have some main focus areas that we work on. First, we have ad hoc requests, which we allocate a budget for that every year. We have a SharePoint request system, and an audit group can go and submit a request for someone to run a report for them. So for an example, if our external auditors come in Ernst & Young, and they ask for a population of loans for a certain period. They'll submit a request for that, and we can run that information for them. And so a lot of times we will assign our extended staff to those types of requests since they're a little more simple in nature, and it gives them more exposure and use to utilizing SAS. Another area that our core analytics team focuses on is our what we call integrated audits. So each area has an audit, and they engage our team to automate certain test steps. And so we go through the planning process with them. We look at what kinds of risks and controls are they identifying, what do they want to test, and we see where we can automate solutions for those particular tests. In that process, I try to identify which of those tests are repeatable. And so then that feeds into our continuous analytics or continuous auditing process. So at the end of an audit, we go through and look at what kinds of tests did we do that were automated and we can repeat them every year. And so we, from that point on, we'll develop those so we can repeat those tests quarterly, semi-annually, to keep a continuous audit going on. So for example, we are developing analytics over our consumer cards. And so looking at things like, you know, if a promotional term expired, did their rate, you know, did they get the right rate when it expired? Or, you know, are customers, are they getting assigned the right APR? And then the last piece, which is new, and I think where we definitely see our analytics going, is our risk intelligence program. And so what we want to do is we are taking data such as analyzing complaints. So we pull in complaints from the CFPB, OCC, FDIC. We look at consumer complaints that have been filed against Key. We can also pull in complaints that were filed against our peer banks. And we can do trending analysis over these complaints to look for areas of risk, anything that we can address as part of our audits or things that we need to bring to our management's attention. We're integrating these analytics with Cognos reporting to create dashboards for management, for the rest of our audit group to use and to you know, incorporate into our risk assessment process, to incorporate into our annual planning, and to incorporate into our risk universe. So it helps drive some of these major decisions that we make as a third line of defense into what we want to audit and what do we want to address. And I think that about sums up what I do in a nutshell. So.
Wow. Hi, I'm Pavan. I work at Progressive Insurance. And my title, as you can see up there, it's called the Data and Analytics Business Leader. And for an external perspective, you can think of it as a combination of a chief data officer along with a chief analytics officer, right? And if you're at Progressive, it's really all about the data. That's what we do, right? I mean, we don't have a physical product per se. It's all about the data. And we basically are in the job of looking at data and assessing risk profiles and so on. So we use data for everything, you know. Do our ads work? Do we have the right product? Are we settling claims in a reasonable amount of time? Are our users having a good experience on our flagship websites, mobile apps, and so on? So it's all about the data. And my task is to make sure that we assemble good data sets, both internally and externally. So can we get external data sets to sort of embellish internal data sets to make good decisions. The other job of mine is to make sure that we have the right recruiting, and do we have the right candidate pool? Do we have good analysts who are actually working? The third part of my job is to make sure that the analysts actually have good tools. Do they have the right training? Are they using advanced machine learning algorithms and so on? Because if you're an insurance company, it's almost like a pretty competitive space. All of us, us and our competitors are looking at similar profiles, and it's all about segmenting the users and finding, I need to know something unique about a person that the next competitor doesn't know, and then you use that for rating, right? So it's very critical for us to know and learn more about our customers so that we can rate them differently or think about them differently. So segmentation is key, and so sort of my world is to take some of the work we've done, and we've been fairly successful and kind of propel it to the next few years, where we're driving a lot of decisions using machine learning algorithms, a lot of external data, and so on. And this sort of creates a new challenge because there's newer tools you need to have, newer training you need to have, and we've got new community of users coming in, and the data is coming to us much faster. So we have devices in cars that transmit data, so we have sort of an Internet of Things kind of an issue as well, because we get lots of data and we want to use it. So it's a pretty vibrant world at Progressive that revolves all around data, and that's what we do. So my job is to just keep that up and running and continue to foster innovation in the data space for us to sort of succeed. Thanks.
I'll start us off with a quick question. In Christian's presentation, he laid out a number of the challenges that organizations face, particularly focused on healthcare, in the world of big data. But those challenges expand to every industry. And in your own organizations and in your own industries, what are you seeing, or what are you experiencing, or in the case of consulting in your clients, as the biggest challenges to implementing business analytics as part of the decision-making on a day-to-day operational level, or however they choose to implement it? What are you seeing from all of those challenges sort of bubble up to the top in your own industries?
Thank you. I would probably say lack of analytics strategy at organizations. I think that's number one problem. Like, we go across clients and we visit clients from several industries, and you feel that the number one problem is that you still find today silos of data sets. The analytics projects that we get invited to develop are one-off projects. Sometimes, like, I work with telecommunication industry and the media companies, and we go to clients and then we find that they want us to solve only like one issue. They have an initiative, they want to do analysis around it, and that's it. Then you go to another client, it's another different problem. So having an analytic strategy, sitting back and assessing the analytics capability of the company, do they have the infrastructure? Most of the time you'll find that they have lots of data quality issues. Their maturity on the analytics capability is like very low, even when we go to Fortune 500 companies. They don't have data governance. They are still thinking about the structured data and data warehouse. They want to get into the unstructured data and Hadoop and do advanced modeling, but so that's on the data side. Then on people side, you'll see that they have lack of talent. Everybody is looking for data scientists. Universities are not producing the efficient number of students that can cover the gap at companies. There's a big gap between the demand at companies and the talent in the market. So that's another thing. And then their processes and their managers, they don't understand how analytics can help them in their decision making. How can they use analytics to assess an initiative before they come up with a new decision, with a new initiative, would they want to change a process? They have to think about analytics. How would I measure the performance of this initiative? How would I be able to assess that this was the right move, and be able to use analytics for there? So training managers on analytics, not to be statisticians, not to be data scientists, but just to understand what is the benefit of business analytics, how it can be used in our business process. All of that is missing as an overall strategy for the company. So putting an analytics strategy, I would say that's one of the challenges we're seeing at corporations.
I'm just going to say what he said. But I'll put a healthcare edge to it. One of the things we're doing is, and large health systems that are growing are doing, is really identifying what are the analytics that describe our business and how do we use them consistently at every site. So we have 15 hospitals, and right now we're stating by hospital, how are we looking at the various measures through analytics, whether they're clinical, financial, business operations. So of course you can imagine there's great debate over what measure is the right outcome to identify success or to come up with our goals. And some of them are more objective than others on the business side, but when you get on the clinical side, what is the true measure of clinical success? And are we creating it because it's data we have, or are we being brave enough to go out there and redefine the data we need to tell us how well we're doing? But on the whole infrastructure side, and I know I was teasing when I said what he said, but it's true, we're looking at how do managers use data? Do they have the skills to understand how to use it to run their business? Do they see it as an essential tool in their toolbox? Do we have the right people on our team from an analytical perspective? How are they trained? And then to that perspective, when we have them, typically a business analytical skill set is a pretty black and white kind of skill set. And how do you teach the engineering, mathematical minded to be creative and curious and dig down into our data to really show other aspects of our business through data? And then I'll just close with saying that you want to create a lot of excitement about it. Because to me, the whole building the business analytics infrastructure and learning more about your organization shouldn't scare you. It should really motivate you to continue to achieve your goals. And for us, it's quality patient care. Thank you.
So specific to our group, access to the data is generally not a problem for us. When choosing a tool that we wanted to use, SAS Enterprise Guide was already being used across our organization. We have a centralized source of data, so I can access the same type of data in a read format that my lines of business can access. So I can see the same things that they see. But where the challenge is determining what is the right data. So there is a lot of data out there, but how do I know which are my critical fields? How do I know which ones I can rely on? And then validating the quality of that data, making sure that it's correct. You know, there can be multiple fields to get to the same objective. Which one is going to give me the right answer? Which one is has the best data that's going to show us what we need to see? Another area is, you know, as I mentioned, our group specifically for our data analytics department is small right now for third line of defense. So the volume of work, it's how do you whittle that down to what can we accomplish with the capacity we have? You know, it's a very exciting topic. People get really excited when they hear what you can do, the possibilities of what we can see, the work we can do. But how do you kind of rein that in and what is feasible? So you know, prioritizing our work, identifying the areas of highest risk. What's going to give us the biggest bang for our buck? What is going to you know, reach the most areas? So I guess whittling it down to that, it takes a lot of collaboration with the other groups in audit, and also having a good understanding of our environment. And then the last area, as everyone has been mentioning, is talent. You know, you're not going to find that perfect package, you know, where you have all the different components you're looking for. You know, ideally, we'd love to have someone that has a business background, an audit background, and a programming analytics background, and they can, you know, do all of those things really well. It's, you know, finding that type of person is just, you know, it's hard to do. So I think our group is definitely, I mean, we have people that we have a resource that's got a programming background. We've got a resource that has more of a auditing, risk management background. We have, you know, a resource that's done a combination of the two. So, you know, it's getting all of those resources to work together to get our ultimate goal. But finding, I think, candidates for positions, you know, we have to decide what we want. So right now we have a position where we're looking for a candidate that has, you know, visualization experience. We want to, you know, we want to create these risk intelligence platforms, so we have to find someone that knows how to use SAS, but can also, you know, create these dashboards and things that we need to use for management. So it's just focusing on what do we need and how can we get that to work with what we already have.
For us, I think maybe I'll just expand on some of our challenges, which are maybe slightly different from what the other panelists are mentioning. For me, I think one of the bigger challenges we're facing is the rate of change that's out there in the industry as far as techniques are concerned. So there's, if you use R, there's like new packages being released on like a daily basis, and how do you keep up with that change, and how do you actually use it? Because there's some really good material being produced out there that we could use to drive business value. So taking sort of a larger company through this new change is where some of our organizational challenges are, because the regular warehouses and databases and pivot tables and all that stuff, we got that fairly well squared away. The question is, how do we advance that? So the whole space of advanced analytics is pretty challenging. And where it gets where everything comes to a head is when you hire folks who are these data scientists, who basically are part programmers, part statisticians, and part know the sort of the business domain they're in. So it's sort of the intersection of those three circles, that Venn diagram. They need access to systems, they need access to data, they need access to new tools, and so on. And that's where sort of one of our bigger challenges is how do we enable and empower this new community of people, because that's where the true business value is for us. The second challenge we have is quantification of the benefits before you actually start a project. It's very hard to say, well, this is the amount of savings we'll have, this is the amount of money we'll make, and so on, because it's hypothetical when you start, but then the benefits actually come later. So we actually have started a process called benefits realization. So you actually put a project together. It's a fairly big project. You start it off small, and then you realize the benefits from it, and you use the benefits to fuel the next phase of the project and the next phase of the project. Because it's very hard to actually go out and say, I need $1 million to do this. It just doesn't fly in the world we live nowadays in. So you say, I'm going to start a small Hadoop cluster with 10 nodes and put this data here, and we think we can get this. And you start small, but you actually have a bigger plan, sort of going back to the analytics strategy. You kind of have a strategic plan, but you've got to be able to figure out how to start small and show business value and actually learn. So because you may fail, you may say, there's actually no value in that. So starting small, thinking big is sort of key, just as a way to explain sort of the benefits, because it's very hard to convince those who actually own the budgets and so on that this is the benefit, right? So that part's tricky. And the third sort of challenge we have is sometimes we get confused between like the destination and the journey, and I think we get those two mixed. So I'll give you an example. So data governance, I think, is something good to have. It's good, but data governance by itself is not a destination, right? Good data, clean data, easy to access data, that's the destination. The journey that takes you there is something like data governance, right? So sometimes if you confuse the destination and journey, then you end up with these bigger sort of entities that are harder to figure out what their actual business value is. So I spend a lot of time trying to make sure, are you part of the destination, are you part of the journey, and going back and forth, because you can get confused very quickly. And there's roles for all of them, but it's just, you gotta like put them in, put it in the right perspective. And then finally, talent is generally hard to find. There's good talent out there. It's just, how do you get it, source it, and how do you actually show the inner workings of a company like Progressive, which actually relies a lot on data, but from the outside may come across as just another insurance company, right? So that's, we are not Google on the outside, but I can tell you, having worked at Progressive for almost 12 years now, we're very much like Google on the inside. We've got great data, we work with great tools, great people, but sometimes I think the challenge is the perception of, it's just an insurance company, and it's not quite that straightforward. It's pretty neat. And to communicate to the talent community out there that we've got some great data sets, they can really practice math at scale. I think it's one of the few industries where you can now truly practice math at scale, which is, things you learn in school, you've never used it on like millions of customers. The great place to use it is to work at a company where data is valued like an insurance company like ours. So those are probably the 4 challenges that we have that we're constantly working towards to sort of improve. Thanks.
Now, I could keep asking questions of a distinguished panel like this all day, but I want to open it up and encourage questions from you guys to take advantage of the incredible insights that you have here. Up front? Yes.
Since talent seems to be a theme across everybody's area, what are you guys doing internally to educate and grow your employees who, like Nancy had said, you've got people that are analytic, trying to get them to be more creative. What are you doing for people internally to maybe help them move more towards the analytical side?
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, this week, we have two people from a company in New York City that actually are trainers. They're actually now part of our team. And so what we've done is we have an IT university at Progressive. We have a marketing university. And this space around data science actually spans both those universities, right? So it used to be that historically, if you wanted to learn elements of statistical learning or whatever, you would go to the marketing university and you'd learn stats 202 or something like that. And if you want to learn C#, you'll go to the IT university. But for a data scientist, you kind of need a combination of that. So since we're sort of in a university setting here, think of it as we're offering graduate level classes at Progressive, and it's called Data Science for Analysts, right? So these are folks typically in sort of the business intelligence space and so on, and we're actually taking them through like a 4-day boot camp of how to learn this new trade and so on, because they already do understand the business domain, so I think they've got sort of a one-up on that. They kind of understand the data, so that's another sort of advantage, but they're sort of missing, machine learning techniques, and how do they go beyond just GLM and so on? Like, how do they just really advance their techniques? So we have a 4-day class for analysts, followed by a 1-day for workshops, so they can actually practice what they learned. And then we have a 1-day version of that class for managers, because if your analysts get advanced and the managers have not caught up, then there's sort of a difference in contemporariness between the two. So we are offering those classes. We encourage our folks to go to conferences and learn from conferences and take actually these certification tests. So you can go to Coursera, take certification and so on. We'll recognize those. And we encourage them to come and play with the Progressive data sets, because the true value that we'll see is if you actually can do one of these techniques on Progressive data. So we have office hours, so you can actually bring your laptop in. So it's sort of like I've been in school forever, so I feel like I should bring school concepts back into work. And so we have office hours, and you've got different room of probably half the size, but you've got different desks in there. And you've got these table tents that say, this is for whatever software, and that's for whatever technique, and so on. And sort of like birds of feather, you can kind of circle around and actually exchange ideas and learn. We send some people for training, they come back, they train more. So yeah, we're investing pretty heavily on training, because if we don't, we risk A, not actually doing the job at hand, but B, we also risk losing people. And that just is like 3 steps back, because now you have to hire people, train them, and tell them the business we're in. So losing people is just not fun. And if we're losing them just because they're missing education, or if they're not feeling developed enough, that's just not the right reason. So we're pretty heavily investing in education.
And I'll add some insights to what he's saying. And now I'm talking from an analytics consulting point of view. Whenever we coach junior consultants, I find that they have a gap at the beginning of the process and the end of the process. So framing the problem and deploying analytics. So what I mean by framing the problem is that most junior consultants coming to our firm, they come with a master of statistics. So the statistics and the mathematical part, they're strong in that, and you can train them on a new algorithm or something different, but their background is in that area. But then once you look at defining the problem, turning a business decision or an initiative into a mathematical equation, looking at the problem and saying, do we need a predictive model for this? Do we need to use machine learning? Or we might do just exploratory analysis. We don't need to develop any statistical model. We're just doing, and there's lots and lots of projects we worked on where it's just exploratory. We didn't do any heavy statistical modeling. So that's one piece. The other piece is deploying the analytics model. You have to communicate this model. It's a mathematical operation. You understand it well. You know what's going behind it. But for the business user, it's like a black box. They need to have confidence in the output that you're generating. So there's a big gap in like explaining the model between a mathematician or a statistician into like a business user. So you need to flip that or maybe wrap that mathematical equation with the business process, with the business decision, and be able to communicate that and then help the business user in deploying that analytics result into their business process so that they can do like change management and apply it where it's appropriate and help them like understand the outcome and how they can do the change management the appropriate way. So these are the two pieces that I don't see in textbooks or at universities. They don't give like enough attention to this like holistic process.
So in healthcare, it's quite a different situation. I think what has already been spoken of is exactly where we're at and what we need to do. But think of leaders in healthcare. So our clinical managers have degrees in their clinical specialty. So our nurse managers will have bachelor's and master's degrees in nursing. So as the whole industry has emerged, so has the need for them to understand data, how to interpret it and trend it, and really look at how their clinical programs are progressing on their units. So for us, it's really teaching a whole new skill set to our managers. And I will tell you, we have to do a whole lot of work on this one. What we've done is we've adopted an improvement model, and we've lean certified our managers in improvement and have had them lead initiatives and have taught them business analytics and data management and how to use control charts and how to use data to get to the root cause of a variance so they can come up with an improvement, which is very simple entry-level business analytics. But truly where we're at, that's where we're at in our clinical programs on the healthcare side. Of course, in the background, we have business analytics teams and analysts and our business intelligence workers who are working to help us benchmark our outcomes, set the standards using business analytics, and as they're doing that, they're teaching it as they're rolling it out. So there is definitely a need in our industry in general to really do much more education on the business analytics side. Even our physicians who are physician leaders, this isn't taught in medical school. It's not taught in nursing school. So really when you look at it, what about improvement? Because I think everyone here has spoke to the fact that we have to constantly keep up with change to advance our organizations. How do we get those basic courses in all of our curriculums, really regardless of the industry, is change management and business analytics. So that's a big to-do in the academic side of our world.
So a key as far as a defined program goes, we have a financial analyst program where we have candidates that go through, or I should say employees, they go through different areas of business, and as part of that program, they go through a week-long training to learn an introduction to SAS, so they can be introduced to the tool, and then depending on what department they end up in at the end of their rotation, they can utilize that SAS skill set in that new area. As far as training goes, formal training, to get our program off the ground, we actually brought in a SAS consultant to give a week-long training that we heavily worked with this consultant to tailor the training so that we would cover topics that were specific to our area, certain things that we would need to know how to do. And so that's how we got it off the ground. We included our core analytics team and also our extended analytics team. So that was the very first training that we had. And then going forward, we've actually been partnering with our enterprise data group, and they, whereas necessary, will bring in training for new employees, for existing employees, So just this fall, we're having a beginner's training and also an intermediate training that not just our audit group's a part of, but other groups across Key are part of this training. And then as specific to my group, once we get that training from SAS, our plan is to then be able to conduct that training ourselves. So first quarter next year, we want to be able to conduct an introductory training to SAS for the next round of our extended team. And that's how we plan to roll out with our team to get them more knowledgeable on how to use SAS and the capabilities and how to integrate that into their day-to-day jobs.
This question is for Parvin. I have a question for a data analyst or data scientist, what you call, when you mention machine learning, those learning algorithms, usually SAS miner only have like 7, 8 algorithms. Basically it's formulated. There are not many freedom to redo it or changing the conditions. When you lead a team for data scientists, which is need a lot of freedom to do the methodology. My question is that, as a big organization, how you introduce a tool, for example, like Weka, into your group, which is not approved by the organization. What is how you persuade, how you integrate that into such a big organization like Progressive? Because many big company has very strict, rule for using open source. For example, big data, many of those tools are open source, like NoSQL or whatever. So I want to know how you deal this in your work and how you overcome those organization red tapes.
Yeah, sure. That's a hot topic. Yeah, I'm familiar with the tools you mentioned, like Weka and so on. We also use a tool called H2O, which is also open source. And H2O, by the way, they have updates every day to every day they have a new version. If you have trouble with it, and they'll say, are you on the latest version? And it's like, well, there was one that just came out last night. So the whole concept of packaging and so on. So what we're trying to do is we have like different tiers. Right, so if you're an Excel user, then there's a certain tier you're in, and the upgrades for that takes place at certain intervals. If you're in the space for, like if you're a data scientist or an advanced analytics person, we have a different way they can get the software they need. So we have a different set of servers, and you log into those servers, and everything you need on that new stack is actually on those servers. So we're sort of isolating the advanced analytics related sort of infrastructure from your regular day-to-day infrastructure. So your day-to-day laptops may still not have all the tools you need, but you don't want to be playing on your laptop anyway because just the size of it will just never scale, right? So we have sort of an infrastructure where we have, machines that have like, I don't know, 250 gigabytes of RAM or something like that you can chain across and make bigger clusters. And we make those available, and you just remote into those. And that set of machines is kept differently from the other set of machines. But they all can still access the same data, so it's not like you have to move data around. The data still stays in the same place, and then you just access it through different machines. And a key part is collaborating with IT and getting these points across to them, so it's not a yes or a no, it's more like, well, this is how we're gonna do it. So we actually have like different grades and so on. Now there are some tools that sometimes, it's what the analyst has used before they came to the company and so on. So we have a vetting process. It's actually pretty quick. Within a day, we can see if the software that we have in-house, if it'll solve the needs. Because you don't want to have thousands of these SKUs, as we would call it. But at the same time, you don't want to have only 2, right? So it's our mission to sort of try new things and so on. We have an area called the Business Innovation Garage at Progressive, and you can just walk in. It sort of looks like a garage-looking room. You walk in, you say, I want to try this tool, and they have all the infrastructure you need to download the tool, try it, put the data in there, and vet it out, and they come up with very, very quickly, within a day, 2 days or so on, they can come up with a point of view on that. So working with IT, working with the data scientists, and sort of that's basically my job, is to make sure that we sort of work towards a common problem. You know, it's basically drive better business value for our customers and progressive. That's sort of the mission at hand, and we work backwards from there. Sometimes it's challenging conversations, but you will have these challenging conversations, and I think we've just matured to the point where we can have these conversations and actually have good outcomes come out of it. There was a slide earlier in the presentation that showed sort of like cost containment versus business value, and I think that's the rub, is like, well, we don't want to have 1,000 pieces of software because it costs us a lot of money. But at the same time, if a new piece of software can produce X amount of dollar business, we want that software. And it is heavily, heavily business driven in that regard. And we push, and we, you know, as I said, we use the Business Innovation Garage as a point of entry. We use these servers that are specially cordoned off for advanced upgrades and frequent upgrades, cordoned off, and that's how we sort of get around the issue. Because we don't want to deploy these machine learning tools for regular analysts in the control group, because they're not going to use it, and we don't want to, you know, move their machines around and sort of cause infrastructure changes for them. So we sort of have these grades of folks, you know, we put them in different tiers, and we approach it through that. It's doable.
All right, there was another question up here.
Hi. The question is about analytics strategy. I believe Tariq mentioned that analytics strategy is a main challenge in most organizations, and a lot of panelists agreed on this. I was wondering how in your organization you translate your business strategy to analytics strategy, and how analytics strategy can drive or change or impact the business strategy going forward.
The analytics strategy is part of the business strategy. So there is a huge alignment between them. So first, we need to, first of all, when we go to a client, we do an assessment of their analytics capability. So we look at their infrastructure. Do they have quality in their data? Enough quality. Of course, you cannot have like 100% quality data, but do they have a sufficient amount of quality data? Do they have centralized, easy to use one source of data in like a centralized data warehouse? Have they used unstructured data and built like a Hadoop infrastructure so that they can handle social media data and call center data and all this unstructured data? Then we look at their, as I said, like the data, the processes. Are processes using analytics today? Do they implement analytics at several of their functions, or is it just embedded into one of their functionalities? And then we compare them to the leaders in the market. So once they know where they stand on that, then we start with the business strategy. We want to understand their ultimate goal, because their goal is not to build analytics strategy by itself. It's to achieve a business objective. So we try to understand their business objective, and then through that, try to enable that business objective through the analytics strategy. And then we build a plan where we put in steps that they can take to enhance their data infrastructure, their people and processes throughout training and through sourcing for data scientists, and plus have like an analytics culture, an analytics environment where everybody embraces analytics, understand its use, understand its benefit, so they are receptive of the change coming from analytics. So you have to work on all these fronts, and it is a subset of the business strategy.
Thank you. What I've heard all day this morning is about the gathering of information, for lack of all these other words we've used. And my question is, with all this information, are there any challenges you have to take that information down to where the rubber hits the road? Your people on the street, your insurance salesmen, your physicians, your bank underwriters? That's my question.
I'll share with you how we're doing it right now from a healthcare perspective, because that's actually where you make any impact using your business analytics. So one of the things we've recently done is we actually created reports that our caregiver teams every day get updated information on certain measures of clinical success. And we put them on what we call their visual management boards, so that every day at change of shift and during the shift when they round, they're saying, here's where we're at with these high-risk issues. Now, of course, we're starting with the high-risk issues, such as med errors, falls, protocols with high-risk compliance to keep patients safe and not getting into clinical trouble. And so until you're using it at that level, your business analytics isn't going to really help you advance your organization. That's where we're doing a lot of education. I mentioned earlier, some of our education is happening what I'll call just in time. So we round every day with our clinical teams, and we use this data, and it's as current, it's either daily, some of it's weekly, so that they can see the impact of their work and improvement. So an example of that might be, are our patients getting effective pain management? And we have updates on those outcomes on a weekly basis per team, so that they can see if the clinical interventions they're using are effective, especially if they've recently are improving the process, are partnering with their physicians to say, we have a new protocol that we're implementing. So to your point, that's exactly how we want it to happen, at the bedside or at the point of care.
I guess I'll just give an example. One of the areas that we audit is over the Home Mortgage Disclosure Act. It's a compliance area that we have to audit annually. And one of the items that we identified was that some of the information required by HMDA was not being entered at the branch level, when a relationship manager was working with a customer. So we had to collaborate with management to train those employees to address that type of issue, to make sure that relationship managers are collecting the data necessary and required to be reported as part of HMDA.
I think, we have lots of situations where it's working and lots where it's not quite, because as other panelists have mentioned, the true business value is when you actually do, when the rubber meets the road sort of thing. In some cases, we can do it very quickly. So like in our internet marketing space, if we learn that we should be placing ads here versus on these websites versus those websites, those are pretty easy to change because you've got folks fairly closely involved to make those changes. If we have some structural changes we need to make to our product, then it takes a little bit longer because some of the work we do is, sort of mandated by the Department of Insurance, and you have to file it and they have to approve it, and once they approve it, we have to program it and then it gets deployed. So there's a little bit more of a life cycle there that takes a little while, and sometimes the bottlenecks can be our own IT groups and so on, just because we have a backlog of work that needs to be done. But one way to overcome some of the backlog work is to show the relative value of it and prioritize it and make a case for it, because as I said, we're sort of the insurance space is very much like an arms race, and so if you have found something new, there's no reason to sit on it because somebody else will find the same thing soon enough. So you have to deploy it and gain that competitive advantage and then work on the next thing. It's sort of like how companies have like patents and they can hold on to a patent for a while, but holding on to the patent is not what they're doing. They're basically working on the next patent. It's because everything expires at some point. So just having a nimble workforce that's constantly thinking about this, having executive sponsorship, I think is key. Like if your CEO and COO and all these folks really do believe that data and analytics is one of the key pillars to success, they can push it quite well, and that's happening sort of at Progressive. We know that we have a lot of support from the higher ups, and that is where it helps, and that's where if we need a sort of a surge of funding or something like that just for this couple use cases, if we need to get contractors just to get over this hump or something like that, that's where those resources come to bear. But yeah, I think it's a challenge, but you just have to stick to it and kind of persevere. And once you have this culture where, yes, the last time we heard the story, it did produce some good results, let's give it some more credence this time, sort of, wins fuel more wins, and you just got to get into that cycle.
Okay, we have time for one more question before we transition to the next part of our program. Raj, you have a question?
Thank you very much. The question is this: as you know, based on your discussion, business analytics is extremely complex as it is composed of data, statistical methods, and strategies. Companies such as yours are way ahead, and universities are trying to keep up with the trends in the industry. How would you address the gap? What would you recommend for the universities to keep up with the industries so that the universities can produce graduates who better understand the trends in the industry and able to jump into this, what you call the business analytics bandwagon? Thank you very much.
That's a good question. That's actually why probably some of us are here, is to sort of build relationship with universities, because we are finding that, much like I was saying, if we don't train our managers, we sort of have this culture gap between what our analysts can do and what our managers can understand. Similarly, I think we're training a lot of people, but we don't know how the rest of the pipeline is. I think internships, capstone programs, partnering with, like us partnering with you or something like that would be one way to do it. And by partnering, I mean truly partnering. If we sign like non-disclosures and so on, there's some fun data sets that can be used for whatever, the final project of a class or something like that, and that's when you experience that, you'll see what the gaps are and you can start working on it. In the past, when we worked with universities, we've even actually, the students who were working with us, we also taught them things like presenting for action or getting things done, because we offer all those courses at Progressive. And storytelling and data visualization and explaining your results is kind of key, but sometimes they may not be as well taught through in the university because it's more academic setting. So we can show you what works on the business side, you can see what works on the academic side, and closer partnerships would be the way to do it, especially in this area, where you've got hungry companies like ours and you've got resources. We're probably at CSU and CASE and other universities close by. I think just working together would be the way to do it. Because the talent's right here, so it's not like we have to source talent from Silicon Valley or something like that. People are here, they're wanting to do this good work, and there's some really smart people, smart universities. We should just work together.
You'll definitely be getting a call from us to work with our business analytics students.
So I want to just add to the internship part of that and tell you a little story. About 11 years ago, I started in a new role at University Hospitals in charge of the service line development, and being a benchmark goal-oriented data leader, the first need I realized is I needed a business analyst. And you have to convince your organization that you truly have a need when you want to bring on new manpower, because it's expensive. So I did just that. I got an intern from Cleveland State. We did fabulous work together developing business analytics for the institutes from a scorecard and benchmark perspective, and taught the organization how valuable that resource was and that program that we developed together. And in this situation, he's still with us celebrating his 10-year anniversary, but it's just that. Not only do you get experiential learning, but you demonstrate to an organization the value of that talent on the team through internships. And I am a CSU alumni from the MBA healthcare program, so I'm always very excited when they approach us and really want to look at an internship partnership. So, and you also learn so much from our interns, and they really come in with a new set of eyes and keep us young. So I agree with the internship concept.
And I'm going to speak about analytics consulting now. We look for analytics professionals, not statisticians. There's like a difference there. Analytics consultant or professional knows about data management. They understand the concept of structured data, unstructured data, the design of a data set. Why do we have unstructured? Why do we use it? Why don't we transfer unstructured into a structured data set? So data management is one piece. Another piece is statistics. Of course, that's like the hard nugget, and that's why everybody concentrates on statistics. The other piece is like visualization. You need to put the analytics output in a form that can be understood by business users, that can be transformed into a business decision, that can be developed on. So for example, like one of the things we promote is that we don't develop analytics output and show it to a client at a one-time meeting and that's it. So we always promote that we need to have continuous improvement and continuous monitoring of the analytics output. So we give them something like a BI tool, like a dashboard where they can keep interacting with the data. And that's where the insight generation, creativity, because looking at the output at a one point of time might give you some ideas, but interacting with it and keep looking at it several times is when you generate the insights. So you have diversified types of skills. You need the data management, I mentioned the statistics, predictive modeling, the BI, the dashboarding, where you have this continuous monitoring. And the last piece is probably from computer science, where you need some programming and coding. You need to be able to understand, even though we see tools today like SAS Enterprise Miner and all these tools that are trying to help us do the model faster, you still need to understand the code behind it and how it's going, because most of the times you have to go in and change something in the code. So you have to have diversified types of skills where you have enough knowledge in these different areas. And I mentioned earlier that the two gaps that we see in the junior consultants coming in is framing the problem and deploying analytics. And here I would say this is not something they can take from textbooks. This is something that can be developed through the internships and what the panel was talking about, through this joint relationship with universities, with the businesses, so that they can start implementing analytics at real world problem. And that's when they start developing, how do I build two models to solve this issue? Or do I just do exploratory analysis? Or do I do just data mining? And deploying, where I was talking about like understanding the output coming out of the analytics and communicating it to the business users and helping them deploy it into their business processes. All of this comes through experience. So you need the diversified skills, plus you need the experience where you can get it through internships and this joint business relationships.
When we look for a recently graduated candidate, we want to find someone that can speak both languages. Someone that maybe has some background in business. They're going to know what we mean when we say debit, credit, that kind of thing. But then we also need someone who's going to be able to utilize tools in our environment, such as SAS Enterprise Guide or Cognos, to be able to help us meet our objectives. And so, a lot of times it's, do you want to teach the new hire, do you want to teach them the audit, the business side of things, or do you want to teach them the programming side of things? So I think if we can find a candidate that has a little bit of each, it makes it a lot easier for us to be able to focus and direct them in the direction that we need. Also, within the different groups of key, there's different things that we might need, such as, we have a predictive modeling statistics group, but we also have a group that does analytics and mining. So, we might need a more specific skill set in just one of those areas. So I think allowing flexibility for students to focus on what interests them, where do they want to develop those skill sets, and then pairing those up with the right opportunities at organizations. And then lastly, as everyone has been mentioning, an intern program, that's definitely a helpful tool to get some real world experience. Another experience that I had in the past was doing case study competitions. That gives students an opportunity to have like a real life situation and trying to apply what they're learning in the classroom to that situation, and partnering with organizations, corporations to perform those case studies can give them a glimpse into what it would really be like working in the workforce.
All right. We could talk about this all day, and I know that there are a number of questions that we didn't have an opportunity to address. Hopefully that will carry over into our social hour at the end of the program, and you'll have an opportunity to interact and ask those questions. But at this point, we have to take a few minutes to transition into the next part of our program. And while Andre is coming up here and getting ready to hook up his laptop, I'd like to once again take an opportunity to thank SAS. We're very fortunate to have the head of SAS Global Academic here with us today, Jerry Oglesby, and I think this is an indication of the partnership that SAS is looking to have with universities, and we would like to thank them and all of the resources that they've given us in putting on this event. I'd also like to thank KeyBank and Progressive again for being sponsors of this event, and as well as taking part in the panel. I'd like to thank all of our panelists, and I think that we would all agree that this has been very informative. So please join me in giving them a round of applause.